What is going on, guys, gals, and everyone in between? You are on the sidelines with the Sideline guys, and today you are joining us for a very special MMA edition. Of course, I've got my brother in arms, my brother from another mother, my guy, Negrong Squared, Sean Negrong. How's it going, Sean? How things been over there in sweet Long Island?
It's good, man. Man, as regular as this card is, I'm very, very excited about it. There's so many great fights in this card, even though there's not a technical title on the line. I am as excited as I could ever be, especially coming off of a UFC 290. This is going to be a very fun card, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Heck yeah, and there's not a lot of room for us, unfortunately, to dive into 290 talk. But had an awesome time with you over there. So once again, thanks for that invite. But like you said, you tipped our hand a little bit here. This episode, we're gonna be talking all things UFC 291, giving you the full preview before we get to Saturday night's main event, and then of course, um, giving our picks and plays throughout for each of these fights. And then at the end, we're gonna play a dynasty fantasy MMA game, which I'm really looking forward to since fantasy season is now upon us in the NFL world. I figured why not try to make it applicable over here to the MMA world. So looking forward to drafting our lineups for UFC 291 and beyond. But with all that being said, make sure that you're following us on all social media platforms. You can find me at Negrong MMA on Twitter, as well as Chris Negrong underscore, well, X, whatever the hell you want to call it at this point. And then I'll have Sean do his in a second, but make sure you're following the brand as well at OTS Media Co. on all platforms, OTS Media on YouTube. We've got a lot of dope stuff coming for to you guys. Some Lord of the Rings trilogy talk, which I'm really excited about. Got to watch that trilogy for the first time and had a lot of pretty
Still
dope
haven't seen it.
things to say about it. Yeah, man, you got to check it out. It's actually really good. Like I'm a pretty nerdy dude, right? So it's like right in my wheelhouse. But uh it's actually a much better movie in my opinion than I ever would have anticipated. Like I think anyone that isn't even into fantasy could like dig into it and enjoy it. So I would highly recommend. But if you want to hear us talk about those movies, check us out on OTS Media Co. as well as all other sports and all other lifestyle needs. We're looking forward to doing our NFL previews coming up real soon too. So a lot of dope stuff on the horizon over there at the channel. Make sure you check it out. But with all that being said, Sean, why don't you tell them where they can find you as well? Sorry to make them wait.
No, that's fine. I love doing these. Yeah, you can find me. I'm assuming we're still calling it Twitter for the time being. At Sean Egron 26, same last name. And then you could find me at BS Reports on Twitter. I have my own website, bsreports.org, where if you want to be a writer, you want to be anything sports related, and you need help getting started, you reach out to me. You can reach out to me on either accounts, and I'll help you get there. I have a baseball podcast as well called At That's Baseball. You could find me there. I have a bunch of different things. I have another football podcast that I'm about to start for the second season at the National Fan Loop. That's going to be exciting. Looking forward to getting that started again. And yeah, you'll never not find me. I'm doing everything sports. This is my first year tapping into the MMA UFC world. I've been watching it for the last 10 years, but now that I get to talk about it, it's amazing. I love it, and so now I can officially say I talk every sport. So this is awesome.
Heck yeah, I'm loving it. And you really do know your shit, man. So it's always a pleasure to have you on the show to
I do
break
my
down
best.
these cards. And man, ahead of time too. Like I feel like there's some times where I'm here tripping out, kind of blending a couple fighters together in my brain, and then you're like correcting me, like, "Hey, what are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Hey, not." It's seldom that someone can match me, so I appreciate that. With all that being said, let's get straight into it. Right, we got a lot of different fights
Sir.
we got to break down here. But we got to be transparent, right? That's what we do on the show. Our last sort of card breakdown we did was for UFC 290. Our final scores, unfortunately, we had one fight fall out, which was the JDM three name Jack Della Maddalena versus Josiah Harrell fight. So that one got null and void. But our record for the week, mine was 3-5, and Sean went 4-4. So Sean is kicking my ass. Last two cards he got me on picks, and this one, I mean, none of us were 500, right? So well, you were sitting just at 500. So we got to get our acts together. So we picked the perfect
And
card
no one
to
could
do so.
predict what 290 had become. I don't think anyone could have predicted that that was going to be the car of the year, and that you could have seen Robert Whitaker go down. Dan Hooker to have the comeback that he
You
did.
called that.
I
Humble
did.
brag. Humble
I
brag.
thought Dan Hooker was going to win because he's had the experience, but I didn't think that when after that first round, I was like, man, I really wish I picked Jalen Turner. But and I did feel that Robbie would have had one final thing left in the chamber for him to go out like that. But you did pick Alonzo Menfield, which I definitely wish I did now. I watching that fight, I remember just sitting there, what the hell was I thinking?
Hmm.
But yeah, no, it was a great card. Probably go down as card of the year unless something takes it over. But it was a lot of fun.
Heck yeah, and I'm hoping this card is another contender for that as well. The card is good when you go home, right? Next day, you watch the whole thing again, right? That's how good it was
Absolutely.
for me. So, looking forward. Hopefully, this weekend's card is more of the same. So, let's jump right into it on the prelims. Our first fight of the night, we've got Miranda Maverick coming up against Priscilla Cachoeira. Um, Obviously, this is a little bit of a quick turnaround, right, for Miranda Maverick. Um,
Yes.
I'll start with my sort of thoughts on this matchup. I think as far as prospects goes, right, it's pretty clear why Miranda Maverick is a big favorite here. I think she's sitting about minus 300. I like the matchup for Miranda Maverick. This is a good bounce back fight, right? But if you're looking to play this fight, this is a dog or pass kind of fight for me. And my reason of thinking that is, although I'm a big fan of Miranda Maverick's upside, I feel like especially as of late, she hasn't really lived up right to that potential that we saw in her debut, getting a really nice elbow knockout, and some of the fights even she had in Invicta. Still feel like she hasn't really seen her ceiling, right? And also has fought a lot of women who are on the rise as well, right? People that we may not have necessarily understood how good they were until they were able to take her out. People like Aaron Blanchfield and now Yasmin Yazdavicius. Look, just breezing through these names, right? You call me a pro, baby. But as far as this matchup and the way it plays out, I think this should be a relatively easy win for Miranda Maverick. I personally wouldn't put her in any parlays though, just because Priscilla Cachoeira at this point has cashed as a dog so many times, and just through pure what I call MMA insanity, right? You don't have to be better. You don't have to be more technical. You just sometimes you just got to be more durable and a little bit more powerful, right? And I think if Priscilla Cachoeira has anything, it's raw power, right? And the ability to sort of change the tides regardless of how well you were doing before that. This is a dangerous fight, and that's why I like it. I'm gonna officially pick Miranda Maverick, but I will not be surprised at all if Priscilla Cachoeira ends up cracking her in an exchange and getting a finish. So it's one of those fights, right? Uh, Women's MMA, women's science. Shout out to my guy Punchlist MMA, my guy Dave over there. Sometimes the dogs, man, they just cash in women's MMA, regardless of how short those odds are. But I'm gonna make my official pick as Miranda Maverick. I think on the feet she's a little bit more technical, and then has a whole nother avenue as far as pursuing takedowns and top control that I think Priscilla Cachoeira really doesn't do, at least in her UFC run so far. So I like this matchup, man, but I'm going Miranda Maverick. What about you?
Tough one to start the card off because this is. I feel like I feel like the odds are a little heavily favored for Miranda. I don't know. I have not been sold on Miranda for probably the last two fights, and Priscilla starting to get my attention, especially with that last TKO win. I like every part of me wants to say Miranda because Miranda has the hype around her, and she's supposed to be like people are really starting to pay attention to her. But like you said, like I could see a situation where Priscilla just cracks her and just finishes her within, the second round. Like it could be that quick. But I believe in the hype of what Miranda can be. I don't know if she's ever gonna be any top 10 contender or top 5 contender, I should say. But both are having a tough UFC run to start. And so right now I'm gonna go with Miranda because I feel she's having a quick turnaround to bounce back from the loss. And I think that will start with a nice win here to start the card off right for 291.
I like it. I like it. We're both going the same direction, but you can't hate it at all. I think this is a bounce back fight for Miranda Maverick. And if she doesn't win this one, then we really are going to have some issues, right? Like, I feel like this is the one where if you have trouble here, right, it's not looking so hot. So definitely a lot of questions will be answered with this fight for sure. Next up, this one's a sneaky banger right here. I feel like this is the one of the hands down favorites to go under a round, in my opinion. We got semi to Jedi Matthew Semmelsberger coming up against Euros Medic. I hope I said that correctly. But two guys that just come to bang, don't give a fuck, and throw caution to the wind. I'm gonna throw to you on this one. How do you think this one plays out?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, it's a tough one. Uh, I haven't liked what I've seen from Matt this last couple fights. Even the win against Jake Matthews didn't really sell me. Um, and then the loss to Alex Morono really had me thinking. But I'm not really high on Medina. Wow, I see. This is what happens. I'm not saying any more names. I'm just gonna say fighter A and fighter B at this point because it's. I'm gonna say Euros. That's definitely
That's
messed up.
beautiful.
But
You
you know
got
what?
it.
That's what's gonna be. I'm not a big fan of Selmelsberger, but this is tough for me. I feel like this is such an in between fight,
Hmm.
and you know what? Give me Matthew for this one.
Hmm.
Uh, I think this will end in someone's getting knocked out, but God, this is I could go with Euros, but just give me Matt. I don't want to waste any more time. Just give me Matt. I'm not sold. That's the thing. I'm not sold on this fight yet.
That is fair. That is fair. I would say I feel like I don't really have a good sense of either of these guys, right? At this point, I feel like um, from what I've seen from Medic, it's either he is getting knocked out in short fashion by Jalen Turner, or he's losing a fight that he ends up coming back to win against Omar Morales. So it's kind of like I'm not really sure what to expect, right? I remember being really impressed with him in his contender series victory against Elon Cruz. Cruz was super hyped up coming in, and he was able to get a finish really within 2 minutes of that fight. So, um, I feel like this is another fight for me. Just to give a full context, Matthew Semmelsberger is a minus 190 favorite, and Euros Medic is sitting at plus 160. This is another dog or pass for me. I feel like even when Semmelsberger is doing his thing, it feels like a a sprint to the finish, right? It feels like a I need to get you out of here right now. I'm gonna self-destruct kind of situation. And I mean, you could say the same thing about Medic too, right? So that's what makes this fight super shady. I'm staying away from all money lines. If you're gonna go anywhere on this, go under, right? Go under 2 rounds or something like that if you could get it at your house. I think that's a pretty fair bet. I'll be really surprised if this one goes to the decision. Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna pick Matthew Semmelsberger. I think he's the more
Hmm.
powerful athlete from what we've seen so far. But would I be surprised? Once again, not at all. This is one of those fights where uh, they knew what they was doing, right? When they was booking it, right? They knew what kind of matchup they wanted to see, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna get it. But we got both unanimous picks in the last two: Matthew Semmelsberger and Miranda Maverick. Next up, CJ Vergara coming up against Vinicius Salvador. Um, I'm a I don't know why. I'll preface next sentence by saying I do not know why. But I'm a huge CJ Vergara fan. Like
Me
since
too. That's funny.
yeah, since seeing him on the Contender Series get a huge upset, and then the war he just came off of, right, where
Yep.
he literally was
He went fight
fighting
of the
for
night.
his life and at certain points running away from his opponent just in the opposite direction, um, and then was able to come back and really mount what I thought was a historic comeback victory against Luan Lacerda. That was a crazy fight, right, at home. And I don't know what it is, man. I love his approach to the fights. I feel like he isn't super disciplined, right? But he gets after it, and he knows when to sort of remove himself from situations if it's getting too dangerous. Um Vinicius Salvador also surprised me a lot in his last fight against Victor Altamirano. I think Altamirano's a little bit better than people give him credit for. Obviously, just came up short against Tim Elliott. But I think this one's pretty cut and dry for me. I feel like on the feet, CJ Vergara should be able to land better strikes and sort of keep things at range. I'm a little worried about Vinicius's length in this matchup and being able to sort of push clinch exchanges. And you know what? Actually, I just talked myself out of this one. Give me the underdog, the first dog pick of the night, Vinicius Salvador. I think
Hmm.
size matters. And I think in this matchup at flyweight, it's just going to be a matter of who can sort of implement their game plan. And unfortunately, I don't really trust CJ Vergara to be consistent in that way. Now, that's no shade. Once again, I just gave him a lot of praise before I made the pick. But give me the underdog, Vinicius Salvador.
Interesting. I think I think he can win Venetius if he gets a takedown. But I don't know. Uh going off of being a fight of the night for Vergara, they both fought on the same card, I think.
Mhm,
I think it was the Sanhagen one. So um I remember the CJ Vergara one winning fight of the night, and I liked everything that he was doing that fight. The only thing was the takedowns that concerned me. I feel like he gets taken down and then it's kind of held down.
mhm,
And I think Venetius could definitely do that and steal a round or two, or steal, and it could go that route. But I honestly do expect CJ to take that fire from that incredible fight in his last one,
mhm.
and I expect the win. Honestly, I don't know. I want to say it could be knockout, ground and pound knockout, but as long as CJ doesn't get taken down and get exposed for more, than 4 or 5 minutes of ground time, then I could see him absolutely winning this fight. So right now, I'm going to stick with CJ and believe that he can get the job done and kind of make a statement to build back up. And that was the thing that shocked me about this specific fight. Why they chose these two fighters to fight. I was surprised that coming off the loss for Venetius, you know, brand new to the UFC, that they were going to give him CJ Vergara right after that. Vergara
Mhm.
coming off a fight of the night, like I felt like that was a pretty lopsided thing. But Venetius is a bigger guy, so I could see it going in what UFC fans consider a boring fight, where you could hear the first booze, but you could also hear fight of the night sort of cheers, where this guy comes in and just shuts the lights out. So I'm gonna believe that that's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna believe that this fight card is going to be one to remember as well, and with all these incredible names on it. So I'm going with CJ with knockout win.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. He's going by knockout too. I'm gonna write that down, right? Via knockout. I think we should try to give those sort of picks as well. I think I'm gonna try to incorporate that moving forward. Whether I think it's gonna be a
Bonus
decision or
points.
some sort of finish, right? Might as well, right? A little bonus
That's
points
right.
to throw it in there. But we got our first dog pick, right? Sound the alarms. Let's start barking, baby. Next fight. We've got Jake Matthews coming up against Darius Flowers. I am not familiar with Darius Flowers in any capacity, right? So this kind of feels like a toss-up pick to me. Um, right now, if I'm not mistaken, let me just double check this. Yeah, there's not
What are
even
the
odds out.
odds?
There's not even odds out for this
Ah,
right
there
now
you go.
on the UFC.com website. So
There you go.
as far as analysis here, you're not going to be able to get too much out of me. I'm going to say, as far as Jake Matthews' career has been going, right? I think the story of his career has been potential, 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 right? Since he made his debut, um, everyone's always sort of looked at him as a real incomplete project, but someone that can really grow into his own at this weight class. Um, Obviously started at 155, now made the move permanently to 170. Um, I don't I don't know what it is. I feel like when it comes to Jake Matthews performances, it's either he's hit or miss, right? Like in the Fialo fight, that was just a banger, right? Where he was able to be the first one to crack the chin and get the win. But even in the Semmelsberger fight, I felt like there was times where he was getting hurt relatively easily in exchanges, and then found himself on the bottom and just wasn't really getting up. So I've always been a fan of Jake Matthews and what he's been able to do. I think he once again his potential is through the roof. His frame, even for when he was at lightweight, was absolutely massive, and still now at welterweight, he's a big dude, right? So I don't think he's gonna be sort of outgunned in that way. But I am a little nervous, right? I think Darius Flowers, from everything I'm seeing, he's a knockout puncher. He gets 9 wins by knockout, 7 first round finishes. So look for this one to be a banger for however long it lasts. I don't have the balls right to make the upset pick here. I'm gonna go Jake Matthews by decision,
I'm
but
gonna say. Oh, sorry.
I'm talking out the side of my fucking face, right? So I have no I'm very unaware of Darius Flowers and his game, but give me Jake Matthews.
Yeah, I'm going with Jake just because of the experience and the history of. I've seen him so many times. I don't know how many fights do you think this is with Jake Matthews in the UFC? It's got to be like over 12, right? 13,
Yeah,
gotta be, right?
at
You
this
know,
point, yeah.
he's been around since I would say like 2014, 2015. So I'm gonna take the experience of knowing how he fights. There are times where he comes off super flat-footed, and he was supposed to be one of the next big things to come into the UFC, one of the biggest faces that they could have developed. Didn't really work out that way. I felt like every time he fought one of a top 10 component, he sort of fell, and to keep it lightly. But there are times where he comes in and has one of the best fights you can get on a card. He's had performance of the nights, he's had fight of the nights. He's been out there. That it wasn't the last fight, but it was the Yuri Glover card where he had, I think, performance of the night. So
Against Fialo, yep.
yes, there you go. I always forget his name because it's like
Because it's hard to
Andre.
pronounce. It looks like Fialho, but it's Fialo.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I always forget that. So I'm expecting that, and with this guy with no experience, he was on a Dana White Contender Series. He only has the win through the injury, in the first round, so there's not much to really go based off of there. I like the experience here. There's a we've seen it just in this Team McGregor versus Team Chandler Ultimate Fighter nonsense, where you get prospects versus veterans, and you could see a veteran who has plenty of UFC experience coming against guys who are just coming into the UFC or trying to get to the UFC, and you can see the difference. The level of fighting is at a totally different level, and even though they may be equally in talent, they're just at a different level of knowing how to prepare for an opponent and how to win a fight, and mentally prepare yourself for another war. And I think Jake Matthews, to be honest with you, I think Jake Matthews wins this one pretty handedly, unless because you're telling me he's got this crazy power, it could take just one overhand right, and we're having a different story next time we talk. But experience tells the story a lot in UFC, and I'm gonna go with Jake Matthews on that one.
That is all a fair shot. I'm trying to see if there's anyone on his record that Yeah, no, not. I mean, you're supposed to fight Jay Ellis at one point, which is fucking sad, right? If you see Jay Ellis on someone's Wikipedia page, it's like, man, um, just
What
free
happened?
brain damage. We're just handing out free brain damage over here on the regional circuit. But has a loss to Bobby Volker. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if he's gonna win, right, it's by some powerful, crazy shit, right? In his last fight, he got a win from slamming his opponent until they had a shoulder injury. So, um, yeah, once again, this is one of those fights where unfortunately I wish we had a little bit more of a technical analysis for you guys, given the two fighters. But yeah, Jake Matthews should win this one. Now, do you have a final guess? Because I looked it up while you were talking for what is the total of Jake Matthews UFC fights so far? Do
Ooh,
you have a final guess for how many fights he's fought already up to this point?
hmm, put me on the spot like that. Okay, I'm gonna go with 17.
Holy shit. You are on point. So he has had
Get the hell out
16.
of here.
He
Oh,
has
okay.
had 16 already, but this is the 17th. So
Yes,
you are
I
correct. You are
when did he
correct.
start?
Um,
2015?
I'll tell you right now. Well, even
Or was
before
it
then,
late
right? So
2014?
2014, 2014.
Okay.
But yeah, before I even really started faithfully watching MMA.
Yes.
And had
I remember him, man.
2 and
He was
0.
supposed to be the next big thing. And then it was that loss to was the tall guy, uh uh James Vick
Mm-hmm.
back then. That
Yeah.
changed everything for him. And like the hype had immediately died down after that. And
Mm-hmm.
then he fought Kevin Lee, lost to him, like whatever, 2 or 3 fights later. And after that, it kind of was like I thought he was gonna leave the UFC. I thought he did leave the UFC for a bit, but
He just
uh,
took time off and went up.
yeah, I guess
So
that's what
that's
he
what
did. He
that's what it
took the
was.
time off, and then ever since that, I think he can beat guys like these where unranked dudes or top 15 guys. He can always handle his own, but I feel like you could see different levels of fighters when you get to the top 10, and I feel like every time he you know gets close to getting there, he gets exposed, and we saw that recently with the Sean Brady fight, where the hype between Jake Matthews was getting there. You got the 3 wins in a row. You're starting to believe. Granted, one of them against Diego Sanchez, which should never be fighting again, but like you started to believe in Jake Matthews a little bit, while Sean Brady wasn't really that hyped up yet, and Sean Brady, I think
Dominated.
dominated. That was a knockout or submission.
It was
I
arm
don't
triangle.
remember.
Yep, submission.
There you go. So I just remember that being a very dominant performance, and ever since that, and that's who he is. Like, and then he goes down, he'll win a couple more, and then he'll lose, but then he'll keep coming back. Like, he's a perfect guy in the UFC that you could keep giving a contract to because he's gonna have some great fights, and he's always gonna be around. Like, he's always gonna be the uh gatekeeper in a way
Mm-hmm.
to this unranked to ranked sort of fights.
Yep.
Unfortunately for him.
And he always looks good coming off the bus too, right? So I think that's always
Yes.
a good thing. So yeah, 11-5 in his UFC career so far, which is honestly very impressive. Like that's a hard thing to do when you've had that many fights and you're coming out on top the majority of the time. So all makes sense why we're picking him here. But once again, Darius could just land overhand right and shut all of us up. So a lot of reasons to check this one out. This next fight, sleepy banger right here. I'm looking forward to this one.
Mm.
We've got the babyface assassin himself, Roman Kopylov, coming up against the Brazilian Mike Tyson, I believe he calls himself, Claudio Ribeiro. Um, I'll let you take the reins on this one. This one's at middleweight, and right now Kopylov is a minus 220 favorite. You can get Claudio Ribeiro at plus 180.
Someone's getting knocked out, that's for sure. Because it's always a performance with these guys. Um, I believe from Claudio, I think every fight's ended in a knockout, either for him or against him. And I don't know. I'm more on the I see. I'm not gonna try to say names here. Roman Kopilov. Is that right? Did I say that?
Perfect.
Here we go. 1 for 1. Uh, I'm I'm on his train on this one. his last fight, which I feel like just happened, did it not? Oh no!
No, it was a little while back.
Wow, has it really been?
Get that for you. Yeah, about 6 months ago now, January
Wow,
14th.
that's crazy.
Time flies, right?
I felt like that was like a month or two ago. That's crazy. Um, wow, that's wild. Okay, so I'm gonna go with him. I'm gonna go with Roman by knockout in the first round.
Okay, I like that. I like that.
Ground and
Um,
pound at the end. I think he stuns him, dude, eyes roll back, and then it's elbows and forearms to sleepy time.
for sure. I don't know what it is about Claudio Ribeiro, but I find him to be such a fucking weird dude. Like, with all due respect, very much has Johnny Walker vibes, right? Just a insane
Yeah.
athlete for the division
Yes.
at middleweight. But the weirdest thing about him, shout out to this, right? I have to mention this, is the woman that's always in his corner. I don't know if you're familiar with what I'm even talking
Mm.
about right now. But there's an older woman, right? Whenever I see her, I can almost imagine it being his mother potentially, right? I've seen them kiss on the lips, so maybe they're married. I have no idea what's going on, right? I have no idea. I'll be frank about this. Um, but she like before every one of his fights, and please check this out because I'm not bugging. This
I
this
don't think I want
happens.
to.
Before every one of his fights, she like has a moment with him and like either and it's happened in both ways where either he's in tears or she's in tears or they're both in tears, kind of sharing a moment, and then like she kind of like sends him off with a blessing and then he goes into the cage. Just one of the most stranger corner relationships, right? That I'm not sure what the situation is, so I'm not trying to speculate or talk shit. But just one of the funnier people to sort of pay attention to before the fight, right? These are things that I always am sort of keeping an eye on, I'm always looking outside of the cage trying to see if there's people that I recognize or things like that. But every time I watch them fight, I'm always like, what the fuck did I just watch? So and he's someone that comes to fucking bang, right? We know this already, tried and true at this point that whenever he fights, it's kill or be killed, right? And often he's the one that gets the knockout. His last fight wasn't fortunate enough for things to go that way. Um, I just been such a big fan of Roman Kopilov's improvement, right? Earlier on in his UFC run, just had a horrible time against a lot of veteran wrestlers and was at a point, right, where he was like, I think 1-2 in the UFC, and he took some time away, came back with a little fro, and just turned into a completely different beast of a fighter, man. I think on the feet he's super technical, throws really nice, sharp, straight punches in combination, and really moves well for the middleweight division. And I know that that's not a high bar to clear, right? But always able to sort of keep his opponent chasing, while also putting himself in a good position to land strikes. Um, I'm a big fan of his improvements and what I've seen so far. So I think I'm a little bit more firm on this pick than most people, right? I'm gonna go Roman Kopylov here. I think this is for me one of my parlay pieces, right? Potentially. I think it's that one-sided of a fight. I think this is an IQ test. I think if Roman Kopylov loses this fight, I think it speaks more to um him sort of falling into that same pattern we saw in his earlier UFC career versus Claudio Ribeiro sort of having his breakout moment. I don't think Ribeiro's going anywhere, even if he loses three in a row. I think he's one of those kind of fighters that the UFC would just love to keep around, and I think eventually will find himself on a winning streak. But give me Roman Kopylov here by TKO as well. So we got two Roman Kopylov picks here. Not too much disparity so far, so I'm looking
I know it's
forward
just
to
weird.
see.
I might have to
Right?
start changing it up.
Copy lot. No, no, don't do it just for the sake. But um, yeah, this one feels like another one that's gonna you'll be good betting the under on this one. Next up, one of my all-time favorite fighters, Derek Lewis, coming up against Marcus Rogerio de Lima. Um, Derek Lewis is a plus 155 underdog, while Marcos de Lima is a minus 180 favorite. I'm taking a dog shot here off rip. I'm not even going to break
Hmm.
down the fight. I'm letting you know that I'm picking Derek Lewis by TKO. And my reason being is I think he knows at this point that he needs a career resurgence, right? And I think in this matchup, while I agree that DeLima has more well-rounded skills, um, th- this may sound strange when you consider the fact that Derek Lewis basically gasses in every one of his fights, but I think he has a way deeper cardio base than DeLima. I think the first round is going to be real dangerous. If Derek Lewis gets stopped in the first round, won't be surprised, right? We've been seeing him on a streak of getting knocked out early, and it has been sad. It's been breaking my heart. But I think the longer this fight goes, the more Derek Lewis will have to offer. And I think, especially if he's able to manage the range, specifically getting out the way of leg kicks early on and not letting that become the story of the fight, I think Derek Lewis is going to be landing big shots come the second and third round. And I think Delima will really be there to be hit come the third round. So I'm going Derek Lewis, a late round TKO here. But once again, heavyweight MMA, I won't be surprised by anything. I could also see Delima taking him down, cooking him from on top, and getting a ground and pound victory as well. I won't be surprised by that. This is a heart pick 10 times out of 10. But I think Derek Lewis's upside, even at this stage of his career, is much higher than Delima. So give me Derek Lewis.
Tough, tough. Because I love Derek Lewis, but I'm going against you. Um, I think Marcos is built to last in these three rounders right now. I think Marcos's biggest downfall is the submission game. I feel like he loses a lot. Once he's taken down, it's kind of like inevitable. I feel like that's what we've seen throughout his tenure as a UFC fighter. But I'm not sold on Marcos really, like at all. But I feel like everyone's kind of figured out Derek Lewis's game plan of kind of standing and banging with you, and if you could just avoid getting hit in the face, which is I guess not easy to do in the UFC, but if you can avoid getting that overhand right from Derek Lewis and getting stuck into the onto the cage and getting pieced up, if Marcos can escape the first round, this is Marcos' fight all day. I think Derek Lewis will gas out within like 6 or 7 minutes, and then I could see Marcos submitting him or just getting some sort of TKO victory on the ground and pound, like you said. Um, I would love to see Derek Lewis win because I love Derek Lewis fights. His fights are always one of the best fights on the card. It's always going to be intense, interesting, and he's one of the funniest dudes I know. Like every time I see him, he's makes me laugh. So, and he's got one of the best power. He's got the record right for most knockouts in UFC heavyweight history, I believe. So,
Yep.
I'd love to see him add to it, but I feel like Marcos is perfect for the Derek Lewis is perfect for Marcos because this could help him push him because I think Marcos is probably right outside rankings. Like I thought
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was gonna be 15, but um
Yep.
I would say this is a nice win for him, and this kind of pushes Derek Lewis' career outside of rankings. Maybe he has one more in him, but I'm gonna go Marcos by submission or by ground and pound TKO at the end of round two.
I like it. I
Sorry,
like
guys.
it. No, yeah. Respect, right? You got to do what you got to do here. I'm gonna write down. I'm gonna write down officially third round for me. You said second round, right?
Yeah,
All right. TKO round two. All
it's
right.
gonna be a great fight, but I feel like we're
It's gonna
starting
be
to
a mess of
see.
a fight, right? Like it's gonna be fucking sloppy, no matter
I think
where.
it reminds me of Derek Brunson in a way where you kind of know the blueprint in front of you of how this fight's about to go.
Mhm.
And if as long as it goes according to game plan for the opponent, it's gonna work out for the opponent. And I feel like that's what's gonna happen. But at the same time, you could see like a Curtis Blade situation where Curtis Blade should have absolutely won that fight, and then one little uppercut, and I shouldn't say one little uppercut, one devastating uppercut, out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, Derek Lewis walks away with his hand raised. So, Curtis Blades was dominating that fight, and then
Yeah,
all of a sudden he wasn't. So that I can see absolutely I can see a situation happening with that. But if it doesn't happen like that, I think it's Marco Solday.
that's very fair. Very fair. Next up, we've got Gabriel Bonfim, the second of the Bonfim brothers, coming up against Trevin Giles here at welterweight. Giles is a minus 315 favorite. Gabriel Bonfim plus 260. So
Ooh,
I'm gonna
wow,
throw to you on this one, man. What do you think about this matchup?
wow! I'm surprised that the odds are that much. I'm going with Trevin here. I really like what I've seen from Trevin, and I think, to be honest with you, I think it's going to be a absolute banger of a fight. And the fact that you put it on ABC to be your prelim top fight has me believe that they believe that Trevin Giles will win this one. Or Giles. I see. I'm done. It's a simple name and I can't get it. But um, oh, but I like Bonfim. Nah, no, I'm going with Trevin. Trevin,
Okay.
go with Trevin. First round
First round knockout.
knockout. Change it up.
Ooh, no way. Okay. I like
Changing it
that.
up.
First round
Changing it up.
KO.
Changing it up.
So here is where the
Disagree with me.
winners are decided, right? I agree with you on the first sentiment where you said I was
Hey,
surprised by this line, right? The line is insane. There's
yeah,
no way I'm putting chalk and minus 300 chalk on Trevin Giles to win
that's
against
very surprising.
anyone. But let alone but against Gabriel Bonfim here. Now, hear me out, right? Hear me out. Trevin Giles is on a two-fight win streak. I'll give you that. And I do
Yeah,
really like his stand-up. I think on the feet, he's really powerful and he's able to really affect change, especially with his jab. I think he has one of the best jabs in, and hear me out on this one, in the welterweight division. Like the dude's hands are really impressive. Um, but considering the fact that, you know, let's look at competition, right? Who did he face in his last two? Preston Parsons and Orion Kosi. I think Gabriel Bonfim is better than both of those guys. And
yes.
he just submitted Munir Lazez, who I think is better than all three of these people mentioned. So, including Trevin Giles. Now, you could argue it was a flash sort of submission, right? So we're not really sure what the finished product looks like, right? So I am making a very um, potential based pick here. But I'm going with Gabriel Bonfim here. I just feel like the level of competition that Giles has fought recently is sort of making him appear to be a little bit better than he is. And the fact that he is a minus 300 favorite in this one is kind of mind blowing to me. So this is going to be one that I'm keeping an eye out to try to play. Give me Gabriel Bonfim by hmm,
Stays
by
undefeated,
decision.
huh?
By decision. I think this is going to be a closer fight than people think.
You're so he's gonna be undefeated by the end of it, is what you're saying.
Yep, he's currently undefeated, and he will remain undefeated via decision. So I
All
got
right,
that written down.
all right.
Next up, I'm gonna throw. I'll start the analysis off on this one.
Hmm.
Michael Chiesa, the wild man from Washington himself, coming up against Kevin Holland. Um, I've waffled a little bit back and forth on this one. Kevin Holland is a minus 145 favorite, while Michael Chiesa is a plus 125 underdog. Interesting considering he is ranked 12th, right? And Kevin Holland is not currently in the welterweight rankings. Um, Here's where I land on this fight, right? When you think of the way this fight's going to play out, it's no doubt in my mind, at least, that at some point Michael Chiesa is going to get Kevin Holland down. I think his grappling and his wrestling specifically is that good, even after filling out at welterweight. I think he's just a really strong, powerful wrestler. Was able to handle his own against Sean Brady, and unfortunately he came out on the wrong side of that one. But it was a real close fight. It's been 2 years since we've seen Chiesa, and I think generally I don't like that, right? Generally, I tend to lean towards a more active fighter. But in this matchup, I think having the time to sort of heal up a lot of these long nagging injuries and put himself in a position to have some adequate skill growth here. I think it makes sense to me why Kevin Holland is favorited here. I just feel like I've seen Kevin Holland get controlled on the ground too many times for my liking to confidently pick him here. So give me Michael Chiesa by decision.
Ooh, I say Chiesa by submission. Um,
Ooh,
I think I think it's gonna be.
you got a round
Mm,
for me?
I'm thinking to be safe. I want to say third, but yeah, you know what? I'll go third round.
I like it.
I think third round. I think exactly what you're thinking. I think, and also Kevin Holland is. I've said this on the podcast so many times where Kevin Holland is who Kevin Holland. The fighter you're getting from him is whoever he is that day when he wakes up. If he decides he wants to be competitive in one of the top welterweights in the world, he will be. You know, he can be. It's lengthy. He can do it. He's got some more range, but it's also if he wants to fuck around, he's gonna fuck around. And I don't think Chiesa is there to fuck around. I think this is one of the biggest fights for him in his career, coming back from the injuries. You know, the loss to Luke and then Sean Brady. You know, I liked his win against Neil Magny. I think I think he wants this one bad. I saw the podcast he does with oh my god, what's his name? The retired fighter. Oh my god, he has a podcast that he does with the UFC.
You are
But he
educating me because Paul Felder.
thank you, Paul Felder.
I
Yes,
thought I don't know why for a second there I thought you were talking about Kevin Holland and I kind of got confused. But yes,
no,
Paul,
no,
Paul
no. But
Felder and Chiesa, the dynamic duo.
he looks so motivated, and
Hmm.
he looks like he really, really wants this one. You know, he said he's going at this in a totally different mindset, but he is so determined to get back into the rankings. And I know he's 12, but back into the rankings of being a top 10 fighter and showing people that he can still be a champion. And I think it starts here. I'm not. I said this in the last podcast as well, where I don't really believe in the Kevin Holland top 10 fighter hype. Think he's a great fighter, but I'm not much to believe he's ever going to crack the top 10. And I feel like this is like the level that he can go for Kevin Holland. Like, you know, he could beat the Ponzinibbio's because Ponzinibbio's the injury history and he was supposed to be great, but you can never really get there. But, the Wonder Boy fight, like, kind of showed me as well that even though he's not getting taken down, can get exposed pretty quickly. Granted, I know he broke his hand and all that, but um, the Wonder Boy fight really showed me something. And then all the other fights too. The Hamza fight was such a ragdolling performance. Like he's getting fucking thrown around. It's just so embarrassing. Granted, that fight should have never happened. That still believe that UFC thing was such a little conspiracy, but um, that's how I feel. He's had some great wins, and Kevin Holland could crack him, and then all of a sudden we're having a completely different conversation. But I believe if Chiesa never had gotten the injuries and dealing with all the lingering stuff, still fighting, he'd be a top 10 guy. And I believe now that he's taken some time off to make sure he's 100% for the first time in 5 or 6 years, I expect him to get a nice dominating win and kind of bring himself and show the rest of the UFC that he's back and he's a top 10 guy.
I like it. I like it. I'm a fan of both these guys, right? So no matter what happens, I'm not going to be disappointed. I just feel like this is one of those styles make fights kind of matchups. And if Kevin Holland wins, it's going to be by some dumb shit, right? It's going to be it's going to be
Yeah.
by some silly punch that didn't really land directly, but somehow wobbles Chiesa and puts him in a position to get finished, right? That's the kind of situation I see as far as his path to victory. And do I think that that is a, a a result I want to bet on? Not at all. But once again, Kevin Holland has good grappling too. So this is one that we can look pretty silly come the end of the night for making the pick. But we're standing with it. Next up, Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. Oof. I just got to start by saying, God damn. Bobby Green is a minus 375 favorite with Tony Ferguson at plus 285 on the comeback.
No.
Obviously, Bobby Green coming off of that
The no contest.
Headbutt no
Yeah.
contest with why am I forgetting Jared Gordon.
Yep.
Um and Tony Ferguson obviously coming off of
Your
that
favorite.
loss to Nate Diaz. Yes, the OG favorite fighter of mine. I don't like the current situation that Tony Ferguson is in as far as coming off of a DUI, right? A very public one. And all of that stuff. So it is kind of dodgy in that way. A little a little nervous about making the pick. I just gotta say it, man. I just gotta say it. I
Don't
think
hold back.
our days of seeing Tony Ferguson as El Kukui are long past us. I think even in his last fight against Nate, he just looked so slow. Both of them looked so slow, but he looked significantly slow in that one. I think you could argue looking back at competition, right? I saw this post. It was like I can't wait till Tony Ferguson wins this weekend and then rolls off another 10 fight win streak to to win the belt. And I was like, you know what? That sounds amazing. But there's no way that I see that happening in this scenario. I love me some Tony Ferguson, but unfortunately, I'm gonna have to pick Bobby Green here by TKO round two. I think Bobby Green is super slick on the feet, doesn't get the credit he deserves, in my opinion, for how good he is. I think he's going to be able to land consistently to the body and sort of keep Tony Ferguson chasing him and just outvalue him. Yeah, I'm going to go TKO round two, Bobby Green, and it hurts my heart to admit it. But you know who I'm rooting for, right? You know who I'm going to be cheering for, regardless
Absolutely.
of who I think is gonna win. But it's gonna be a sad day in the Negron household.
Well, I'm about to cheer you up because I think Tony wins this one.
Ho!
Absolutely. I think Bobby Green is a fantastic fighter, but he's also been around a very long minute. And oh my god, like well, you have to say Bobby Green's been here for at least 12 years, right? Like he's
Yep.
been around. And he's never really brought me to the hype that I thought he could have been. And I felt like that was so long ago. That Dustin Poirier fight from like 7 years ago, maybe now, like 8 years ago. I don't even remember. But that's when I like believed in the Bobby Green hype, and then I stopped believing in the Bobby Green hype that quickly. And then ever since that, I've always loved when he fights. I've always been a big fan of his. But I believe that Tony has fought the best of the best at this weight class. Got demolished by Gaethje. Then, you know, Charles Oliveira, same thing. All of them were on the come up. Dariush. And then the Michael Chandler fight changed my perspective in a way because I believe Tony won that first round.
Yeah.
And then it was the obviously the front kick, one of the one of the most devastating knockouts I've ever seen on anyone, especially on someone like him who never gets knocked out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yes, he's got the TKO loss to Gaethje, but he never got knocked out. He was fighting through it all. To see him go to sleep like that, I think changed him. You know, he's coming back with the dyed hair. He's up in a weight class. You know, they're trying to change everything. This team's all like a big mistake, and like then again with the conspiracy with this whole, you know, he's supposed to, who was he supposed to fight? Li Jingling, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's Nate Diaz on the main event. It's like you got no time to really prepare. He looked super slow. He's not a welterweight. He's a lightweight. He was always built to be a lightweight. He's much better as a lightweight, and everyone he's fought at lightweight has been top three, top five guys. And yeah, he's not the most competitive out there. You know, I remember going into the Oliveira fight thinking, I think he's gonna good bounce. I think Oliveira wins, but I think it's gonna be a great fight.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it wasn't. You know, I thought Tony Ferguson was got his arm ripped off, but
And his leg. Don't forget
yeah, that
that.
too. You're right. You're right. But then when I saw the Dariush fight, you know, Dariush dominated, but I was like, Tony held his own, made it to the end. Was pretty surprised. And then the Michael Chandler fight, like I'm starting to see Tony come back a little bit. So I feel like when you go from Gaethje, Oliveira, Dariush, Chandler, and then the Nate Diaz fight, I really don't count for him because up in a weight class, now you're fighting at a I don't even know if they kept it at welterweight. I think they did a catch weight, and then I believe maybe I'm wrong, but then having literally less than 24 hours of knowing who your fighter is, like that whole thing was bull and whatever. That was made for Nate Diaz. That fight was made for him to win. To walk out on top like that. I think he literally finished the fight with 209 left in the round. Like that's when you know. Like it was just made for Nate Diaz to walk away at the top of the top against a legend like that. And Tony's a legend himself, but Bobby Green is not on that level anymore. And I think Bobby Green is the gatekeeper of unranked fighters. And if you can beat him, you could start to believe you're going to be a ranked fighter. But Bobby Green, every time he gets close to fighting these top guys, it never pans out for him. And I think that's exactly what happens here. I think Tony gets a win because I don't see Tony walking away. Tony can't. Tony's his own worst enemy. He should have walked away 2 fights ago, but he's never going to do that. And now he looks like a totally different person now. I just saw the embedded. Yeah, I'm going with Tony here. I don't know if it's going to be a knockout because I don't know what type of power Tony has anymore, but I think he's a way better fighter than Bobby Green here. And I have him in my parlay to win, and I'm going Tony. If it's not decision, I'm going with third round knockout.
I'm writing that down for the prediction because you just made my night. I would love for that to be the case. Bobby Green is someone that also has an indomitable chin, right? So I hope
Yep,
this turns into the war that it could have been a couple years ago.
exactly.
But I just feel like Bobby
This
Green's going to
fight's
be too much.
super long overdue.
Yeah.
Super long overdue. And it's because Tony was on top of the world for so long. And
Yeah,
then never getting
he
that
would
Khabib
never
fight, he would have never
even
fought
imagine
Bobby.
fighting him. Yeah, literally.
That's what I'm saying. Like Bobby's been around and he never got to Tony's level. And yeah, Tony's fallen off, but Tony's fallen off to the best of the best.
Mm.
Bobby's fallen off years ago to the mediocre. And the guys who have weren't even in their prime yet going past him. Like every time he wins two, he loses one. Then he'll lose two more, then win two more. And he's always flip flop. So I really believe Tony, and it's only I want Tony to lose because I want him to retire. I don't want to see him keep fighting. It reminds me of like Donald Cerrone in a way where I love Donald, but please stop. Like it's scaring me every time you get in there. But I think Tony Ferguson's too good for is his own worst enemy, and he wins, and then he thinks he can fight another two or three more times
Mm.
based off of one win. And I think that's what happens on Saturday night.
I like it. I like it. Nice thorough breakdown there. Next up at welterweight, we've got the number
Mm.
7 ranked Stephen Thompson coming up against the number 15th ranked Michel Pereira.
Ooh, what
Um,
a weird one.
yeah, very strange matchup,
Karate versus karate.
odds wise as well. Um, Stephen Thompson is a minus 165 favorite. The comeback on Michel Pereira is plus 140. I'm gonna let you take the lead on this one, Sean. Go ahead.
Well, like I said, karate versus karate here. This is gonna be this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be really fun. It's gonna be a banger. The Pereira fight where he had against Ponzinibbio, that one fight of the night, that was one of the best fights I've seen from both of those guys in 5 or 6 years. That was an incredible fight. It probably my favorite fight because it was on the freaking Holly Holm fight night. Can't stand Holly Holm being a main event. I can't take it. But that's got my attention, thinking and believing in Pereira again. I went into that fight thinking Ponzinibbio was gonna win, turn his tides around, but I think Pereira was great, and I think this fight is something that Wonder Boy has always wanted. He's always wanted a guy that he doesn't have to wrestle with and have to deal with creating separation. Both these guys want separation, so I think these guys are gonna absolutely just throw down. And I think Wonder Boy's a way better fighter than Pereira, so I have Wonder Boy. But this is gonna be such a fun fight. I don't think people are talking about this enough because you have this main event that's just gonna they're gonna kill each other. But this whole card, everyone's gonna kill each other, especially the main event. I mean the main card. But I think this is gonna be an amazing fight. And I think unless Pereira tries to go with the wrestling, and I don't think he's really going to try to do any sort of grappling or anything like that. I think this is going to be a nice little stand up karate versus karate. I know Pereira doesn't do exactly karate; he does karate and something else, but Wonder Boy is strictly karate. This is fun. This fight has been rumored for like 5 years, and now I'm so glad that it's happening because they're both in the ranked, and you can't say this is a weird time. So Wonder Boy's trying to build his one final attempt to get a belt. And he's 7 right now, I believe. Wins this, probably goes to 6. He slowly starts to build himself in the welterweight rankings, and I absolutely believe Wonder Boy wins this one. They're both pretty old. Wonder Boy's an old man, but I like this fight for him. This is a perfect fight for him. He's not having to deal with the wrestling and the grappling. Like that's his kryptonite. So this is a great fight for Wonder Boy, and I expect him to get a nice win here.
I like it. I like it. Whew. I think this is a real defining fight in Stephen Thompson's legacy, right? I think if he loses this one, the talk of retirement swells up, right? I think this is a tailor-made matchup for him to win, right? I think if he ends up losing this one, I think it is that time, right? I just feel like stylistically, these kind of guys, right, has been the people that he's feasted on, right? People that are willing to come forward, people that are willing to engage, really falls right into his style. I think we get a nice, slick Stephen Thompson vintage KO here, with a straight left hand. Give me Stephen Thompson by second round KO. Um, I I like Michelle Pereira. I think he's a fucking unit for this weight class at 170. I just don't really see him um, being able to overcome the specific things you need to do training wise in order to fight Stephen Thompson. Like such a weird style to prepare for, and then even harder to fight against because the instincts you usually have against other fighters when you're out of the fight um, really just put you in so much trouble against Stephen Thompson. And I think we've seen Michelle Pereira really chase after guys and put himself in terrible positions to land big shots and ended up being the winner because of it, right? Um, if we get another Anthony Pettis just disastrous KO from Stephen Thompson here, I mean from Michelle Pereira, I won't be surprised, honestly. I feel like even though Stephen Thompson is shown to be insanely durable, right? Just look at the Kevin Holland fight. The guy took some insane shots in that one, and really put in one hell of a performance there. Um, but at the same time, he is getting up there in age, right? So that's why this fight is dangerous. That's why the odds are this close. But give me Stephen Thompson via second round
I
TKO.
I would say they're both getting up in there. They're probably the same age, right? They got to be both
Yes,
pretty
but Stephen Thompson has a lot more fight miles on him. I feel like that's a little
sure.
bit more indicative
Oh
on
no,
actual age, right?
no. What am I talking about? I think Pereira's got to be like a lot younger than that. I'm imagining him as an old man already, but he's maybe like 6 7 years younger. Now that I'm thinking about it,
Mm.
but I just like Wonder Boy. Yes, he's old, but if you take away the Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns, where they're just wrestling him the whole time so that he can never create distance, like he doesn't do anything in those fights. He's just getting dominated, just getting taken down. The second he even gets close, taken down, held down, submission attempt, whatever. But the fight against Luke and Jeff Neal, and then the one we just saw with Kevin Holland, he's winning fight of the nights, performance of the nights. He's who he's meant to be against a guy. Even though the fight way back then when he fought Masvidal, like he's fighting his fight, dominating, keeping the distance, can't get close to him, and he's hurting you. All those fights, he's absolutely dominating, really high in striking and significant strikes, and I expect that here with Michelle Pereira against Michelle Pereira.
I like it, man. I like it. This is a fun fight. No matter which way it goes, it's gonna be another banger. And I think they did that specifically for this card. Like, there's a lot of fights on this card that are fucking bangers. So yeah, I'm literally as I continue to break down the card, I'm just getting more excited for it. But I've reached our co-main event, right? It is that time, um, and honestly, if you ask me, this is one of, if not uh, the matchup that I've been thinking about for the longest time on this card. The matchup that I'm not really sure how it's gonna go, but I'm so excited to find out. We've got Yanni Blackjacks, Jan Blakovic coming up against Poatan, Alex Pereira. Obviously, they're ranked. Blakovic is ranked third at light heavyweight, and currently Alex Pereira is still listed as second at middleweight, even though he has moved up. Right now, the odds are basically a pick 'em with Jan Blakovic being at minus 120. So a real slight favorite, but basically a pick 'em with Alex Pereira at minus 110. Now, when I imagine how this fight is going to play out, I think we have a really fun indicator, right? When you think back to the Jan Blakovic versus Israel Adesanya fight, where we have a kickboxing based striker in MMA coming up against the bigger foe, right? In Jan Blakovic. Um, now, in that matchup, I think Jan Blachowicz really showed his worth with takedowns as well as checking of leg kicks. I feel like that's the biggest thing to keep an eye out for in this matchup. I think Politan is really good with low calf kicks, but Jan Blachowicz has, in my opinion, the best. And this is maybe a hot take, right? And may get a couple people to look at me weird, but he has the best kick defense in MMA, in my opinion, across the board. And it's not just because of technique, but it's also because of just straight willingness, right? You need to be willing to take that shot in order to check a kick. And it ain't easy, right? Most of the time, whenever I'm trying to be taught how to check kicks, I'm wincing. And by the end, I'm crying because it fucking hurts. And it's hard to put yourself in a position, right? Mentally, where you're willing to put yourself in that spot to hurt your opponent. Jan Blachowicz must have just titanium fucking shins at this point. His shins must be absolutely insanely conditioned to take damage because he is so willing to check kicks. Kind of scary how willing he is to sort of put himself in that position, and it always pays off for him. You see, come later in these fights, he doesn't even look as slow as he does in round one because his opponent's legs are just battered to pieces. And a lot of times it's not even because he's kicking, it's because they're kicking and he's checking them. Um, as far as knockout punch and power, it's very clear Politan has the advantage in that realm. Um, and we've seen Jan Blachowicz kind of get one punched against guys like Thiago Santos. So that sort of bodes in a negative direction for me. I'm gonna go with the slight upset here. I'm picking Poatan. I think Poatan really has next level power that I've seen translate in kickboxing. So I think this is gonna be a really dangerous fight for as long as it lasts. Um, I think I won't be surprised if this one ends up going to decision either. And honestly, if Jan Blachowicz takes him down and submits him, I won't be surprised either, right? It's that kind of a matchup. I just feel like Alex Pereira training with Glover and company. He's continuing to work on those things that we don't really necessarily have seen in the last couple of fights, but I don't doubt that he's been really getting the time in with Glover, working on those different aspects of his game. And I think it's going to be harder than people think to take him down in a matchup where he should have the striking advantage if all things are equal. So, man, I'm looking forward to this one. I'm nervous, I'm scared, but give me Poatan round 2 TKO.
Mm. You want me to be honest with you?
Yes, sir.
I think this is going to be one of the most one one way fights that you'll ever see. I think Jan absolutely dominates Pereira.
Wow.
I don't even think it's going to be close. I think this is so overhyped. I think this is as perfect for Jan as you can get. This is going to be his fourth fight fighting a guy coming up in weight. Fought Jacare, coming from middleweight, now went to light heavyweight. Luke Rockhold, when he decided, I'm going to go to light heavyweight. Adesanya, and now he's fighting Pereira. He's seen this so many times. Granted, Pereira's basically a light heavyweight already, but I think Pereira was so dominant because he was fighting in a weight class underneath him. Pereira is a light heavyweight, but he was fighting in middleweight and could dominate anyone. He crazy power and he's way bigger than everyone. But Pereira's chin very weak to me. I don't think he can last one punch from one clean Jan Blachowicz Polish power. I think Pereira is sleeping.
Really?
Yep. I honestly do. And I don't think Pereira is even remotely close to Jan's level when it comes to light heavyweight. I think they should have given Pereira like a top 10 guy, and maybe I would have gone with him, but to give him Jan, a former champion, and I'm not even on the Jan Blachowicz train because that Magomed fight, he lost that fight. And he was great against Rakic, and then I'm not sure how 100% Rakic was at that one. But then the loss to Glover, that's the kind of what makes me believe a little bit because Glover has seen Jan. He beat him. He now is telling everything to Pereira on how to beat him. I get it. But Glover's a different style fighter than
Hmm.
Pereira. He's going to take you down. He's going to smother you and just take your breath away, literally, and choke you. Pereira's going to stand with you and just give you, some crazy combinations and that crazy left hook, and it's going to take your head off. But Blachowicz can do the same thing. And I think Blachowicz is on a totally different level here. And I think we're going to see it within the first 2 or 3 minutes when Blachowicz has Pereira scared. You're going to see it. I honestly, to be completely honest with you, I would be surprised if it goes past round one. But I absolutely believe Jan Blachowicz knocks out Pereira within this fight, and it won't even be
Wow.
close.
Holy shit. This is hot take central. I did not expect that at all. I love it though. I love a man that's convicted, and you, sir, are very confident in that it's gonna happen. Do we have a
I would,
round pick here?
yeah, I would absolutely love for Pereira to win because then you could set up so many storylines here.
Mhm.
Then you get Pereira versus Yuri because now Glover's retired. You get this sort of situation here where just like Jan Glover could tell what to do about Yuri, and then if not, whatever happens with that fight, if Pereira wins that fight, if I'm totally wrong about Pereira, and he can go and beat Yuri after this, then oh my god, then you set up this whole storyline with you could have Pereira as the light heavyweight champion, Adesanya chilling in middleweight. Maybe Adesanya comes up to fight again to try to become a double champ. You could make such a crazy storyline. So
Mhm.
I would love for Pereira to win. I'm not really too sold on Blachowicz beating Yuri. I don't think that's going to happen.
Mhm.
But I think Jan's on a totally different level than Pereira, and I think that happens now because I think Blachowicz got a little comfortable winning the title,
Mhm.
defeated Adesanya to defend it, and then I think we all went into that Glover fight thinking that Jan was going to win that fight. I know I expected 41-year-old Glover to not win that fight. So it was just a nice thing to do for Glover because he had won 5, 6 in a row. It was a nice story. I wanted Glover to win. I just didn't think it was possible. But then Glover wins, and then Jan looks totally like a different fighter. Went out and beat Rakic, but then the Magomed fight, it looked like just looked so mediocre the last three fights. But I think it's a perfect thing for him to get Pereira because he's gotten the experience with three other middleweights coming to light heavyweight and dominating all three of them. This isn't new territory for him. And for this, it sets up a title fight, which he so desperately wants that belt back. I think this is the perfect stepping stone for that. And that's what I think happens.
I love it, dude. I did not expect that at all. Honestly, I felt that way initially. Like I felt like m- gun to my head, my initial pick when I heard the matchup, I was like, I'm Jan Blachowicz by decision. Right, that was my initial pick. So the fact that you're picking by KO is really fascinating. I think what we saw with his chin really had to do with the weight cut more than anything. Remember,
Yeah.
Alex Pereira fought at light heavyweight in kickboxing, right? He never
Yep.
fought at middleweight in kickboxing. Um, well, he was a two weight world champion, but the weight classes are closer to
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
205 versus the actual
Yep.
185 division. So I think that is also affecting your thoughts on his chin, right? But hey, I love Jan Blachowicz' power as well.
Yeah,
I'm
send
a
some
big
shots,
fan.
man. Send some shots my way. Let's go.
I'm a big fan. No,
Tell
no, no.
me why I'm
I
wrong.
gotta, I gotta talk my shit too because I'm like, I do see where you're coming from. I could see how you arrived there. But it's just, in my opinion, it's hoping that Jan Blachowicz can do a lot of things consistently. That unfortunately, I feel like as he's gotten older, um, the peak, right, of him being able to do those things consistently, I don't think is there. Um, I agree. I think had Rakic not got injured, right, I think there's a big chance that he would have lost that fight, based on how it was going before the injury. But who knows, right? Maybe the injury was caused because of some of those checks that I was talking about earlier, right? We can't just assume that it was just a freak accident, right? So man, this is a fun fucking fight, and you could tell we're on opposite ends of this, but there's so many different angles. So I love it. I love this co-main event. I can't wait to be sitting down watching it. But we're on opposite sides. Can't wait. Can't wait. This might be the one that determines who wins this week, right? But
Absolutely.
did I get a round from you?
Oh,
TKO
okay.
round what?
Hmm. I have another question for you, but to answer yours, I'm gonna say round two.
Yep, just like me. Round two is the winner. What is your question, brother?
My question was, I forgot to ask you this before, but I'm gonna ask you now since we're still talking about it. With everything that happened with Yuri, and then with what's his name that I love how I'm forgetting. Um, oh my God, why
Jamal
is
Hill.
this happening? Yes, Jamal Hill, obviously great. It's like a light heavyweight division is a little cursed right now, but were you happy that they didn't make this a 5 round title fight underneath the BMF belt or above it, whatever? Or were you happy that they kept this at 3 rounds and that, they're kind of saving this for Yuri when he comes back to fight for the vacant, whenever that's going to be? But
Hmm.
at first, I kind of wanted them to make this fight, a 5 rounder. They both were champions. They know 5 round experience. I would have loved that to see both of them dig down maybe a little late in the training camp to do, but
Hmm.
I would have loved to see it. But as time has gone by, I'm glad that they didn't, because I I think it's best to leave it for Yuri to fight for a vacant belt, not to fight against someone who really didn't deserve it, because this fight wasn't deserving to be a championship level fight.
Mm.
This was the number one contender fight. So if this was an interim fight, I would have been like, okay, 100%, throw an interim title on it, 100%. But not to become the undisputed champion. You're not. You're not undisputed because it's completely disputed.
it's
So
it's it's disputed squared at this point.
yeah,
There's two asterisks on the title run.
exactly,
So
exactly. So yes,
I do feel
what do you
like
think?
they made the right move. I think bumping any fight to a 5 round fight on a couple weeks notice is a bad idea in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think it just changes the way the fight was planned to play out, right? Like I would assume if you're fighting a 30 round fight, it's a little bit more of a taxing game plan as far as you have a 15-minute window to let everything out versus the 25 minutes where you're kind of figuring out where to ration your skills, right? I don't want to put them in a position to try to coast, right? In a fight where the stakes are so high. So I think it made sense why that was the initial thought, right? Because this is the biggest light heavyweight fight on the horizon right now. So it makes sense why you would want to give it that asterisk. But I agree. I think Yuri is the king of this division, even if everyone is healthy, right? So I think him being able to fight for a vacant belt, considering how he left the title, I think that's a really good storyline. So I do like that. Um, would I have been mad if they done it? No. I think this is a fight that is deserving. If there's any other fight that is booked at light heavyweight that's deserving, it's this one. So I wouldn't have hated it, but I agree. I like that they didn't go that route. They kept it a 3 rounder because it feels like this one's just a number one contender fight now. There is more stakes, even though the belt's not attached to it. It's pretty obvious, right? This is number two and number three. So, and number one is injured. So whoever wins this one is most likely going to be the guy to face Yuri when he comes back. And I think that's an awesome matchup, no matter who it is. I think
yeah,
both of those guys pose different threats and make for a fun matchup. So yeah, get inject this fight into my veins though. Like no matter what, if it was a title fight, this fight would have been great. So I'm pumped to see how it plays out. Given the 3 round nature, I think it gives us more action than we would have got in a 5 rounder. But now it is time to talk about the action men themselves. Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje 2. Their first fight was an absolute barn burner. I watched that one back recently, and I was actually surprised on how bad Dustin got hurt in that one too. Right? I feel like when you know the way these fights play out, especially for Poirier's career, you tend to think, man, he's so good. Like he really dominated. And man, these fights are razor thin until they're not. Like I feel like that's the case for a lot of Poirier's fights, especially recently. Man, there's so many different angles, so many different ways I could try to shoot this fight, but for me, I think it really ultimately comes down to two things. I think it comes down to setting and experience, and I think the setting for this fight is in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is at elevation, and I think that's going to play a big factor in this fight. Now, why do I think that plays a big factor? I think it's very clear, right? Justin Gaethje trains at elevation. Dustin Poirier does not. And I think when you consider their fighting style, they both kind of have the same gear, right? There's no let's cruise and figure each other out for none of these guys. We turn into a barn burner pretty quickly. And I think given that and also considering that between both of these guys, I think they're both at that stage of their career, right? Where within a couple fights, I don't see either of these guys staying at the top of this division. And I know that sounds crazy, right? Because they've been at the top of this division for so long. I just feel like they're coming towards the peak of the mountain for their career versus still ascending towards the top. I think there's a lot of young guys that are really going to take over lightweight real soon, but we're not there just yet. Um, when you look at this matchup, what really concerns me for Poirier is honestly his last couple of fights. Like his last fight, I thought it was very clear that he won against Chandler. But round one, he got hurt against Michael Chandler and was really in a bad position. And I think you could think back to a bunch of different fights that was the same kind of story, right? Dustin, the first Dustin Justin fight, the Dan Hooker fight. Like there's so many different fights that you can remember. Poirier is a goddamn dog, and I don't doubt. I'm not saying he's gonna get flash knocked out here. I just feel like that plus the elevation really does add up. And when you consider Justin Gaethje, while he has also taken some insane damage in his career, I think as his career is getting a little bit longer, I think he is actually getting a little more technical. I think we saw that in his jab in the last fight against Fiziev. I think he knows a little bit better, in my opinion, how to get hurt and put himself back in a good position than Dustin Poirier at this stage of their career. Now, once again, I can picture a scenario where we watch this fight and I'm just completely wrong, right? And Poirier is able to dominate out the gate. But I just feel like Justin Gaethje is really coming into his own at a time where Poirier, we've seen him sort of come up short against big time opponents at this weight class already. They're both kind of crescendoing in their careers. And I think this is going to be an all time banger. Like, I think this fight, there's no way this fight is going to be not fun to watch, right? Like if this fight is boring, I think I might just stop watching MMA. Like this is one of those um guaranteed all action fights. I'm picking Justin Gaethje by late round TKO. But I won't be surprised if this goes either way. You're muted, brother.
Why was I muted? All right. My bad. I have a even crazier hot take for you. I think, unfortunately, I'm a much bigger fan of Justin than I am Dustin. I'm not. I don't know. Dustin makes me cringe in a way. I was a big fan of Dustin, but I feel like Dustin cries and complains a lot, and I feel like he's always throwing a lot of like like crying about stuff even after he wins. I don't know. I don't want to get too into that because I want to talk about the fight, but not a big fan of Dustin, so I would absolutely love for Justin to win, but I think Dustin wins in the third round and by knockout. But and while that happens, I think Justin retires. That is my big prediction. I
Oof.
think Gaethje. I think Gaethje has made it clear that he's doing one final run here, and if he loses this, that run is all but over. And I think that's why this is going to be one of the best fights we will ever see. I think it's going to be an absolute. I would love for this to go into the fifth round, even the fourth round, but because they're going to swing, they're going to absolutely obliterate each other. It's going to be like the Michael Chandler fight for both of them, where they just stand and beat the shit out of each other,
Mhm.
and one of them's going to go down. I feel like Poirier can get hurt. We've seen it get hurt, even in the Connor fights. And like, I'm not the biggest Connor fan, but even in the Connor fight, the first round of the second fight, he clipped him, and you could see that bothered Poirier. But like Connor is nowhere near what he once was. Even in the third fight, he clipped him again in the third fight, and you could see Dustin was rattled a little bit before putting him against the cage, and then Connor can't do anything in the wrestling. But I've seen him get hurt. The Chandler fight really rattled Dustin, and I think they're both heading towards the tail end. I think they both got one little title run left in them, and I think it continues for Dustin. But I think Dustin will never ever be a champion.
Mhm.
I don't think. I think he will always go down as the ultimate gatekeeper of the UFC, of the never gonna win, but always be a number one contender. The fighting for a title but can never get there. Like Uriah Faber in a way, but Uriah had won before when he was in the WEC, and then once the UFC came, he had the 5 title fights but never could win. So I think that's what's gonna happen. I think Dustin wins, and then Justin will realize after being obliterated, you won't even recognize who Justin is anymore. You won't recognize who Dustin is either, but I think Justin will sit there in the moment, upset, knowing that was probably the toughest fight he can have, really knowing there's not going to be many people left to fight. And for what? He's got the money, he's safe, he's good. And then retiring, putting the gloves down, and having the fans endure him and saying goodbye. Unless they do some sort of event in Arizona coming up that I don't know
Mhm.
about, that that's where he's from. I think this is it for Justin Gaethje. I think it's going to be a hell of a finish to an incredible career, and I think Dustin will continue on for another 2 or 3 fights until his reign is over.
Mhm.
As once he loses again, but I think Dustin will win the BMF belt if that really matters, and then Justin will endure the fans, put the gloves down, and retire.
Oof, I love it. What is the round on this TKO that you gave me?
I, I
Dustin
said I
Poirier to
said
be the
third. I said
third.
third
Okay.
round knockout, but that's what I was saying. I hope it goes to a fourth and even a fifth, because I want this to be probably one of the best fights you'll ever see in the UFC. I think it's going to be probably a top 5, top 10 fight. We're
Mhm.
going to be sitting there wherever we are watching this, either if we're together or not. But, oh, like, we're going to be, oh, God, we're going to be doing this. Like, please, like, stop. It's going to be tough to watch, but it's going to be an incredible fight. And, yeah, it's going to be sad to see someone like Justin go. But that's just my prediction. I'm not saying that
Mhm.
that's what's out there. But because UFC doesn't, especially fighters, they don't tell anybody that they're retiring until afterward. The
Yep.
Robbie Lawler thing was like a once in a lifetime thing that we have never seen that really. So I think that's what happens, and keep this train going.
Yeah, I won't be surprised if both of these guys retire after this, to be honest. Like, I feel like they're both at that stage of their career. But
Yeah,
I also won't be surprised if they both got three more in them, right? Like,
yeah,
it's kind of a crossroads fight for both of these guys, and that's why I really like this matchup. And I like that it's a rematch too, because I feel like gives them time to get another look at a matchup that they already saw, but a crazy matchup nonetheless, right? Absolute war. Please watch that first fight again.
oh yeah,
Leg kicks were the difference in that one.
yep,
I think in this one it's gonna be it's going to be body work against the fence. I think once Poirier gets hurt, he just sort of puts himself against the fence, and I think that's what's going to be the
I
difference.
would
But once again,
love, I would love
shows
for what you're
you that I'm
saying
on the
to
other
happen.
side, right?
I would love for what you're saying to happen because I think whoever loses next, or once they lose, either one of them is retiring.
hmm
Because even in the embedded, I heard Poirier say this that he doesn't have to do this anymore. He doesn't really want to, but he's trying to get that title one last time. Like he's trying to get one last title reign. And you heard Gaethje say it in the last fight that he won against Fiziev. I think same thing. I think if Gaethje loses, he's retiring. If Dustin loses, I don't know if he'll retire right then and there, but I think he'll consider it. Maybe do one more and then retire. But I think this could be the final fight for whoever loses.
Whew,
And then
goddamn!
the other goes to a title shot.
And what a way to go out, right? Like
Absolutely.
this is gonna be a barn burner, man. I can't wait for this one, and we've said that enough. So I think it's time to move on. But I'm looking forward to this, right? Because the more I kind of thought about this, I'm like, man, this card is kind of filled with a bunch of old guys, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
so this kind of changes the way I think we should make these picks. But I'm really excited to do this little dynasty draft. So once again, for context, a dynasty league, typically seen in football, is where you are drafting players, right, with the idea that this player will be on your team for the future, right? Until they retire, they are on your team. And you got to consider that when you're making these picks, right? Whether or not, yeah, they might be good right now, but are they a good long term investment? And I think when looking at this card, there aren't many of those, right? So it kind of makes a sleeper pick here. So I'm going to flip a coin here. And the way we're going to run this draft is whoever gets the first pick. After that, it's going to be a snake draft. So it'll be 1-2, and then it'll be 2-1, and then 1-2. So whoever gets the first pick obviously gets two picks after that, and same thing vice versa. So
Keeping it
sh-
just in the card.
yeah, only for
Ooh.
fighters on this card. So let me do a little quick coin flip on the internet, and then we will decide who's winning this. So you're gonna call the flip for us,
This is a bunch. I'm going with heads on this one. This is a bunch of old heads.
and it lands on heads. So look at that. You get the first pick of all the fighters at UFC 291 for the Dynasty draft. Who are you going with here?
Mm, This is tough. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Yeah, this is you know what? Because if we're going to what is the best way to get a guy into a title shot right now, I'm gonna stay away from the prospects first. I'll get to them. So I'm gonna take Dustin. God,
You can only
I'm
get one
taking.
pick. It's my pick next.
I know,
Chill.
I
Chill.
know.
So you're going Dustin Poirier first pick?
To if he's my greatest shot to a title, gotta go with what I know. Dustin's definitely the first guy on the list, so I'm gonna take Dustin with the first
Awesome.
overall pick.
I think right here is where the snake benefits me the most. I
Yes,
think the obvious
hate the
pick for
first pick.
me right here is going to be Justin Gaethje, especially because I think he's going to win. So thank you for that one.
Ooh,
Made it easier for me. And then my third pick here. Now this is where things get interesting, right? This is where if things go the way you laid it out, this isn't the
that's right.
best pick I could make, right? But I think this is the best pick, the best available player on the board, so to speak. Give me Alex Pereira with my third
I
pick.
love that. Thank you. That's a steal for me because I'm taking Jan because
Oh,
that's what I was gonna take
really?
anyway.
You're taking
Absolutely.
old man Yanni Blackjacks.
Yeah, I'm taking Jan Blachowicz all day. Alex Pereira will never sniff another title fight again, unless it's against Adesanya if he decides to go back down. He's never sniffing
Ooh,
another title shot. It's just
all
not happening.
right. All
So
right.
then
I think this
I'm going
really
with
hinges
Jan.
on who wins here, right? On whether or not who
Absolutely.
came out on top of this little exercise. You get the next pick again, so the
Ooh,
fifth pick.
this is tough because it's so much old dudes. All right. If I have to think of someone who's gonna get to the title next. Ooh, okay. I'm gonna go with. Oh my god, this is so tough. I got two I'm debating on. I'm gonna stick to the main card first. You're not gonna agree with it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. And I'm gonna go with Michael Chiesa.
Okay.
I'm gonna take him. I believe he's still a top 10, top 5 fighter, and the injuries have killed him, but I think he could still be a top 10, top 5 fighter. So I'll take that for right now.
I like that pick. I like where it's placed as well. I think no matter who, right? I think we're picking both of the guys in this fight, so I think it's fair. But I'm glad you went Chiesa because if I had the chance between the two of them, I was picking this guy anyway. So give me Kevin Holland with my sixth pick. So that leaves us with the roster of the following. Sean has Dustin Poirier, Jan Blachowicz, and Michael Chiesa. And I've got Justin Gaethje, Alex Pereira, and Kevin Holland. So we got a three little team
Oh no
dynasty.
no 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 no. You gotta go four, and
Oh, we're going four? We're
you
going
have to
four?
go
Okay.
four.
My bad. My
You
bad.
gotta finish the snake.
All right. Now, we did
And
finish the snake technically, but okay. Seventh pick for Sean is
well, no, one, two,
we did
three.
six. So now we're doing eight.
No, yeah, you gotta finish the snake because I would get the last, second to last pick, right? Or I don't know. I was thinking, yeah. So whatever, we'll do
We
four.
finished the snake because I went first, where you went
That's
first and
yeah.
I
You're
went
right. You're
last.
right.
But it's all
You're
good.
right.
We could go
Let's
four.
do
I don't
four
care. Let's go
because
four.
I want the fourth one to be a prospect or
All right.
someone we're looking at in the prelims here. So for the fourth, I'm going to go with. Oh, this is so tough. I have two guys in mind here, but give me Kopolov. That's who I want.
Oh, you sniped me. Gosh. I wanted that so
I was
bad.
going him or Vergara, but I like Kopolov here, and I'll take him for my
I'm gonna
final
go
pick.
with the person that I think has the strongest upside in their division. I think that's the important part to consider that, and that is Miranda Maverick.
Ooh, wow. Okay, okay.
Whew.
The
So we've
hype is
got
there.
four picks. Four picks. Our final rosters are as follows. Mine are Justin Gaethje, Alex Pereira, Kevin Holland, and Miranda Maverick, and yours are obviously Dustin Poirier, Jan Blachowicz, Michael Chiesa, and Roman Kopylov. So
Right.
this was a fun exercise. I think this is something we
I
should
like
keep
that.
around, right? Something we should keep around in the future because I think it gives us an interesting way to sort of look at these fighters and their futures in these divisions, while also giving us something fun to sort of look at moving forward, right? So who knows, right? Maybe this is something we revisit later, like whose dynasty team did the best in this year after doing this for some time. I think
Yeah,
that'll
that's
be
right.
pretty cool to keep track of. But with that all being said, I think that's it for today, man. UFC 291 is a fucking barn burner. The amount of KO picks we both have is insane. Like I was looking at the thing and I'm like, there's no way this plays out this way. Like there's gonna be some decisions along the way that we didn't pick. But that just really speaks to the matchmaking on this card. They really wanted to make this entire card a banger, and they did so. So really looking forward to checking this out. Before we head out, Sean, make sure you to remind them where they can find you.
You can find me at Sean Agron 26, and then at BS Reports, and then bsreports.org. You can find me there. Message me anytime. You can email me whatever, and at Sean Agron 26, I believe, is the email as well. So, but regardless, you can find me and whatever you want to do sports related, you find me. I will help you regardless. That's just who I am. I love getting people started, and it's gonna be you can. It's gonna be fun. I thank you. I appreciate you for having me on as always, and it's gonna be an incredible card. I look forward to talking about it once we have seen everything unfold in front of us, and see you in the next one.
Heck yeah, man. This was awesome. And I think maybe moving forward, it might want to consider separating the recap and the preview, right? Because having a full preview show like this, I think we were able to do a lot more. So something to consider moving forward. But once again, thank you for coming on. Make sure that you're following the brand OTS Media Co. on all platforms, OTS Media on YouTube, as well as you can check me out on Twitter at Negrong MMA, as well as Chris Negrong underscore on Instagram. So keep an eye out for that. Also, going to be having a TikTok on the horizon, but I ain't ready to make that commitment just yet. But once I am, you'll see a lot more content clips wise from a
Do
lot
it.
of the different shows we do on this channel. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. Sean, thank you so much. It's been real as always. One of the most accountable people in the podcasting industry, right? So if you need anything, definitely reach out to him. make sure you're letting us know as well how you feel about the show. Let us know if there's anything you want us to add, anything you want us to change. What do you like? What do you dislike? We'd love to hear from you guys and tailor the show a little bit more to what you guys want. But with all that being said, we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.